If you can turn to Ezra chapter 3, that's where we're going to kind of be this morning. And as you're turning there, if I could get everyone who has ever been a camper or on staff at Sierra Bible Camp to raise your hand. Don't blurt anything out. You see how many lives this camp has touched. And if you look in the bulletin, there was a lesson that I was going to be giving this week, but as of a few days ago, when we found out that the Dixie Fire had destroyed Sierra Bible Camp, I changed it. In fact, Friday morning, I kind of called an audible and wanted to talk about something else because of the impact it made. And if you're visiting here this morning and you hear a lot of people talking about Sierra Bible Camp, I guess we should clarify, what that is, so you know kind of where we're going with it and why there's so much emotion that is involved with it. But this is a Bible camp that has been around for years and years, and this congregation, and I know other congregations, have benefited greatly from it. And we've hosted it a week in June every year, and just people from all over, and children and adults have been a part of this, and so it really does mean a lot to those who are here. And that's why you see a lot of emotion that is involved with when something like this gets destroyed, and to see all the memories of it. It was hard to see SBC. I mean, it's almost going to feel like preaching a memorial, but that's really kind of what what it is when you start thinking about what this camp was and what it meant to so many people. But there's a reason why I want to go the direction that I do this morning. SBC was as we came off of this last year, and we weren't able to have the camp last year because of this pandemic and so many places that were closed. And it affected a lot of people, because that was the one place that we could all come together and see each other, and we could laugh together, and we cried together, and heard so many great devotionals up there from the young people. And so we couldn't have it last year. And then this year hit, and we had no idea. It was still uncertain with what was going to happen. And we waited, and we waited, and we tried to wait until the very last moment, but by the time we did, we just, and everything started opening up, we felt like we just wouldn't have the time to be able to put anything together. And so we had to cancel it for a second year in a row, and none of us liked it. But that's, that was the decision. It was a hard decision to be made. And then we decided, next year is going to be it. There's no more waiting. SBC was supposed to be the comeback. We have talked about that, and there have been so many inquiries about Sierra Bible Camp. I mean, I had phone calls and people coming up to me, and letters even written. When are we? Is there going to be a camp? Is there going to be? Are we to be able to have this back? And I know the elders have been flooded with it. I know other people have been flooded with it. As if you've been a part of it, just wondering if we're going to have that week in June, because that week in June meant everything to some people. But that was, it was supposed to be the comeback. And we were supposed to have, we had talked about how this was going to be probably, maybe one of the biggest years that we've ever had, with all the interest that has been generated. But we said that's going to be it. 2022 is going to be it, because we're returning to normal, and we're finally going to be able to get all the kids back together, and we're going to be able to open that pool, and we're going to be able to hear Jessica lead Miss O'Leary, and we're going to be able to see just all the faces. And instead it burned to the ground, and things changed. And it hurts, because it was more than just another summer camp. It was family. It was campfire. It was swimming. It was hanging out. It was crafts. It was games. It was amazing food. It was singing. It was friendship. It was fellowship. It was lessons and devotionals. And it was baptisms. I've talked to so many people and heard from so many people that said SBC is where I heard the gospel, and that's where I was baptized. And it was significant. Not because it was the water or there was anything special about the water, but that was where so many young people heard the gospel for even the first time. And they saw the friendship and just how connected everyone was. And they studied with someone up there. And they saw the church at its very best. And they said, that's what I want to be a part of. I want to direct your minds, if you would, to another group of people who lost something great. And it was a very much a part of their lives for so long. And we see this in the Old Testament. I'm talking about the Jews. Because for 70 years, the Jews were taken captive. And we know why they were taken captive is because they started disobeying and disrespecting the Lord. And because of that, they were taken into 70 years of captivity. But as God promised them, it wasn't going to last forever. There was going to be a point in time where they were going to be rescued, where they were going to come out of this captivity, and they were going to be able to work on getting their lives back to the way it was. And when you look at the book of Ezra, Ezra is an account of all of these different Jews coming out of this captivity and seeing what was their home, Jerusalem, for the first time since that. But what was hard about that is that Jerusalem had been destroyed. That's different circumstances than what we have seen over the last couple of days or the last week. We know many homes have been destroyed in this fire. And it was the livelihood of so many different people. But though it was different circumstances, I think there are some of the same emotions that were involved. Because they realized that once a place that meant so much to them was in ruins. And Ezra talks about in his account how they came out and they saw this. And when you get to chapter 2, it talks about all the different people that were coming out of this and all the different families that were coming out of this captivity and coming back to the place that they once knew and seeing just the rubble, just everything was just leveled. But you get a sense of just how many people, how many lives were really affected by all of this. And there were different walks of life and different backgrounds and different interests. But they all shared that one commonality with Jerusalem. Not so far from what we feel from when we lost SBC. And then you get to chapter 3. And this really sort of puts everything into perspective as we reflect on what we're going through and what they were going through. It's interesting when you read the first couple of verses here, the first 6 verses rather, because the first thing they did when everything was lost and they realized everything was lost and nothing was going to be the same as what it was. But the one thing that they never lost sight of was that they turned to God, was God. They turned to God and realized that He was the one to get them through this. Verse 3 starts, or chapter 3 starts rather, and when the 7th month had come and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered together as one man to Jerusalem. What a sense of unity that is. And you think when we came together up at SBC, and as we come together on every first day of the week, it's the same kind of unity that we are one people. It's as they gathered together as one man to Jerusalem. And then Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and his brethren, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, arose and built the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. And though fear had come upon them because of the people of those countries, they set the altar on its bases, and they offered burnt offerings on it to the Lord, both the morning and the evening burnt offerings. And they also kept the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings in the number required by ordinance for each day. And afterwards, they offered the regular burnt offering, and those for new moons, and for all the appointed feasts of the Lord that were consecrated, and those of everyone who willingly offered a free will offering to the Lord. From the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, although the foundation of the temple of the Lord had not been laid. They also gave money to the masons and the carpenters, and food and drink and oil to the people of Sidon and Tyre, to bring cedar logs from Lebanon to the sea, to Joppa, according to the permission which they had from Cyrus, king of Persia. Cyrus was the one who came in and released all of them, or he freed them. He conquered Babylon and was, in his decree, released all of them. You notice what they did first thing when they saw all of this? First thing they do is, we've got to build an altar to the Lord. And no matter how bad it gets, no matter what the devastation is, that is our focus. But you notice it wasn't just one person who built that altar. All of them got together and they worshiped God and they turned to Him, the one who was able to get them through this. But not only that, they did it together. Because they knew that's what bound them. It's interesting that some believe the altar was set up where the former altar was. They said, we're going to get our lives back. And so they went to God first. And then it was time to rebuild. Verse 7. They also gave money to the masons. They were building all of this back up. And it says, in the 2nd month of the 2nd year of their coming to the house of God at Jerusalem, Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, the rest of their brethren and priests and the Levites, and all those who had come out of the captivity to Jerusalem, look at this right here, began work and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and above to oversee the work of the house of the Lord. And Jeshua with his sons and his brothers, Kadmiel with his sons, and the sons of Judah, arose as one to oversee these working on the house of God, and the sons of Henadad with their sons and their brethren, the Levites. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests stood in their apparel with the trumpets, the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals to praise the Lord according to the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And they sang responsively, praising and giving thanks to the Lord, for He is good, for His mercy endures forever toward Israel. And then all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. We're able to see the heart of who these people were. They worked together to get through it. That's what we do. But it was an emotional occasion. And we see that in verse 12. As we read this and take a look at it, you think of all the different, we have so many different memories. I think every person has their personal favorite memories of what this camp was and what it was like up there near Lake Almanor. And the one thing that drew everyone together was being together. And even though they're able to rebuild, and we know that that there's going to be an end to this fire. We know that they're going to be working on the land, and we don't know how it's going to happen or what's going to happen, and there's a lot of uncertainty with it. But we know somehow, some way, we're going to try to get back to what we were or what it was like. Verse 12, though, really brings in some emotions that I think are very familiar, especially these last couple of days. Because, even though all of these things were going on, it says, but many of the priests and the Levites and heads of the fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Why? Because that is what they knew. They remembered all of the times together, and they remembered Jerusalem and all the best parts of it, and they remembered each other, and they remembered the homes that were there. They remembered the structures that were laid and that were built before, and they remembered how they got together. And there were so many different memories with them. And they saw, some for the first time, what was once their livelihood was now in ruin. And that's why we feel so deeply about this. Because we remember waking up in the morning and running to the showers before breakfast, and we remember all of those games, and we remember the canteen and the mess hall, and we're reminded of these people who would rebuild, but it was also a reminder of what was lost. But there's an end part of verse 12 too, which is interesting. It says, yet many shouted aloud for joy, so that the people could not discern the noise of that shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the sound was heard afar off. You see, their home was destroyed, and everything was gone. But they also knew that they would get through it together. And you cannot create a greater bond than that. They relied on God, and they relied on one another to endure. It is an encouragement, if you've been a part of it the last couple of days, to see all the pictures posted on social media and just all the stories that have been coming out, and people saying, I remember this part of this, and and you see all these old photos, and they all, and everyone has just specific things that they remember, and I have a feeling that's kind of what happened with the Jews that were returning. There were things that they remembered specifically. It's why they wept, because it did mean something to them. And we weep because it means something to us. But there is something very profound that they also realized as they were coming out of all of this. That yes, there were going to be memories. But they were realizing that it's the people and not the place that made it important. It's surreal, and it breaks our hearts. But we're going to recover. There's uncertainty. But while fire has destroyed the camp, friends, you can't destroy the memories. They're there. And they're going to stay. And there are things that we personally miss the most, but it's because this is the place that connected us. And it connected a lot of people who never would have met us otherwise. And we remember all of that. And then we are reminded that SBC is gone, but it's not gone. You see, when you go up there, campfire is just a stage until you put those people on that stage and in those seats. And we create something that is just so special. That swimming is just a pool of water until you start throwing all the instructors into the pool, feeling how freezing cold it was. The mess hall was just a building until you filled those tables in the kitchen with people and meeting together for the crafts and all the games and hanging out. That Bible bowl was just a big, it was just a big space of dirt with logs to sit on and folding chairs until we met and sang together and hear the devotionals from the young people. Those cabins were just cabins until you filled those cabins with love and friendship and just getting together and bonding. That's what SBC was, and it is. That's why we know that it's not gone. That's why we know that you can't destroy SBC, because every person that raised their hand in here today is SBC. And we're experiencing the purpose of what it means to be a Christian. That is one of the greatest takeaways that I think we could ever imagine with this. See, Jerusalem was just a place until those people filled it and they came together. And why do we talk about this, and why do we just bring this up in a lesson of all things on a Sunday morning? We've been doing a series on what the church is in the New Testament, and looking at every time the church meets, and every time the church is mentioned, and look at the circumstances around it. And when you think of the friendships and the fellowship and the singing and the worship and just everything that it was with SBC, that is the church. Because it's the people and it's not the place. The church of Christ. He's the head. He deserves it. We trust in him, who will not leave us. And we lean on each other. But here's the great part about all of this, if there is a great part, which I believe there is. We go through all of these and we say, well, how can you suggest a silver lining? Because here it is right here. If you think relationships at SBC are great, I want you to imagine how much greater it's going to be in heaven. This is where these relationships begin. And if we're faithful and we are obedient to the Lord and we follow him according to what his word says, this is just the beginning. And we're going to get to expand those relationships And it's not going to stop. And it's going to get even better. But please consider that, those relationships that you have built, the ones that you could have, and realize that you can be there if you're obedient to the gospel of Christ. If you're here this morning and you want to become a part of something so special, something that the Bible talks about, we want to encourage you to come forward. Let's sit down. Let's study the Word of God and make you a Christian so that you can be a part of the greatest family that you could ever be a part of. Let's stand and sing.